Due to their isolation and unique challenges, islands around the world can be home to some strange and unique creatures and phenomena seen nowhere else in the world. They're also home to some strange mysteries which may never be explained. Number 5. Vesrazdinia Island roughly translates as Rebirth Island. As the name would suggest, it was one island that straddled the border of what is today Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. Today, it cannot be called an island in the traditional sense. The sea that it lays within can also not be called a sea. Altogether, it's a stark reminder of the damage the USSR caused to the natural environment. But the mystery surrounding Rebirth Island is much darker than a dried salt lake. Vesrazdinia was once a small island in the Aral Sea in the USSR. As the government diverted the water that fed the sea, it dried up and the island rapidly grew in size, surrounded by a salty desert. But salt wasn't the only poison in the soil. The island was once home to a secret bioweapons lab, and a number of mysterious incidents have been connected to its activities. In 1971, a scientist fell ill after the research vessel she was on was submerged in a brown haze. She was eventually diagnosed with smallpox, a disease she had already been vaccinated against. She went on to infect 9 people in her hometown, 3 of which succumbed to the disease. The following year, the fishermen went missing while out on a lake. Their bodies were eventually found adrift in their boat. It was later discovered they'd suffered from the plague. The natural wildlife in the area was also greatly affected. Locals would pull up whole nets of fish that had already passed away in the water. Given many of the small villages that surrounded the lake relied on fishing to survive, the incidents were especially damaging. In May of 1988, 50,000 antelope that had been grazing in a nearby pasture all passed away within the span of just an hour. The causes of these mysterious incidents and how much the island played a part in them remains a mystery. The US had known about the bioweapons lab for decades. Aerial shots showed research buildings, an open-air testing area, and animal pens. The exact strain of diseases that were put to work on the island remain unknown, but smallpox, anthrax, and typhus were among the diseases that hung in the air and penetrated the soil. It's also known the island is now home to the largest cache of anthrax anywhere in the world, after the Soviets dumped anthrax mixed with bleach into a pit on the island. Later cleanup efforts by the US minimized the impact of this cache, but the island is still deadly and most locals stay away. Today, many of the buildings in the village that had once housed scientists and their families lie in ruin, as salvagers have claimed anything that might be worth money. The facility was abandoned in 1990, but bottles of deadly chemicals still line the walls of the laboratories, just waiting to be used. Number 4. Isla La Gaiola, just off the coast of Naples, was once a holiday home for wealthy Romans, and may have been a teaching spot of choice for the famous poet Virgil. But starting in the 1800s, the 2 small islands were developing a reputation for being cursed, a reputation many of the previous owners would attest to, if they were still alive. Gaiola Island is made up of 2 smaller islands, connected by a solitary stone bridge. There are countless natural coves close to the water's edge, which were allegedly where Virgil worked. It's also possible to swim from the coast to the islands, and today it's a popular snorkeling destination on account of the ancient Roman ruins there. The curse allegedly began in the 1800s when a man known only as the Wizard lived on the island. He was a hermit and didn't come to the mainland. A few local fishermen would occasionally give him handouts, but other than that, he had no interaction from the outside world. so when he vanished without a trace, there was no way of knowing what happened to him. While it's likely he lost his life in the water, his body was never found, and rumors that some kind of dark magic may have been responsible ran rampant. The next owner is the first we actually have a name for. Luigi de Negri was the owner of a wealthy fishing company. He purchased the island in 1871 and built the villa that still stands there today. Little is known about de Negri, but shortly after he built the villa, he went bankrupt as his business failed. He was forced to sell off all of his possessions. The island passed from buyer to buyer, each one suffering tragedy. De Negri, it would turn out, had gotten off lightly, as many of the owners either had their lives taken or suffered other losses in the family. Among the famous owners were Fiat boss Gianni Agnelli, who lost his son and nephew while in possession of the apparently cursed island, and billionaire Jean-Paul Getty, whose grandson was kidnapped for ransom. The island eventually passed into the hands of the local government, and it's part of an underwater park tourist destination. The villa is now abandoned and has fallen into a state of disrepair. Even after being abandoned, the island continues to attract stories and even violent crimes that happen on the coast opposite of it and have been attributed to the island's curse. Number 3. Barca Kelms, like many islands in the area, was completely off limits for a time during the Soviet era. Officially, it was a nature reserve aimed to help rehabilitate the population of wild donkeys in that part of the country. In reality, the salt deposits on the island made it a particularly dangerous stretch of land, as any dust storms in the area could be lethal. The secrecy of the Soviet program only added to speculation, and a number of rumors emerged in the 20th century. Everything from a strange sea creature to living pterosaurs to UFOs were reported to be seen on or near the island. However, the most famous of the legends were those of temporal anomalies. One story was allegedly submitted by a ship mechanic to the local media. He told of having seen a mysterious military base on the island as he sailed past. The next day, on the return journey, the base was nowhere to be seen. In another story, a family found themselves shipwrecked on the island. They stayed there for 3 days and 3 nights before managing to return to civilization. When they returned, they found 33 years had passed. While almost all of the stories have since been proven to be hoaxes, many locals still believe there is something mysterious about the island, which ceased to be an island in the 1990s. The nearby ship graveyards, where rusting ships lie on the now dry lake bed, only make the location even creepier. Number 2. Easter Island isn't the only Pacific island home to the mysterious ruins of an ancient but advanced culture. Nan Madol is shrouded in mystery. It was once the political, religious, and residential center of the Saudalor people, a group of people said to be the descendants of 2 brothers who came from Pohnpei to a religious community that worshipped the sea. Over the course of 4 centuries, the people mined great columns of lava rock from the other side of the island to build their city. The buildings somewhat resembled typical log cabins, but made from stone. More than 750,000 metric tons of stone were used to create the structures, which could be up to 25 feet high. Foreigners and modern natives alike are puzzled as to how the feat was achieved without pulleys or levers, especially considering the island did not have a vast population to rely upon like the ancient Egyptians. Religious ceremonies, like the feeding of a turtle to an eel, the sea deity, were performed there. Legend has it that over time, the rulers became tyrannical, and they were eventually overthrown by an outsider that created the governing system, still used today on the island. After that, the city was largely abandoned. Today, there are stories of spirits that still linger within the great stone walls. The fact it was used as an inspiration for some of H.P. Lovecraft's work has only added to its eeriness. Today, the site is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and work uncovering the secrets of the city has only just begun. Number 1. From photos, Palmyra Atoll looks just as close to a stereotypical island paradise as it's possible to get. The shores are made out of coral reefs, the lagoons are a beautiful blue, and tropical rainforest covers anything that isn't sand. The only signs of human habitation are the airstrips that were put down during World War II, but they have long since been abandoned. But one scientist who'd been doing research on the island in the 1980s described it as a hostile and forbidding place, a world removed from time. It was a feeling shared by many who found themselves on the islands in the Pacific Ocean. Even from the first recorded sighting of Palmyra, the sense of foreboding was present. The atoll was first sighted in 1789 by Edmund Fanning, captain of a ship sailing from America to Asia. He had been unable to sleep and recorded feeling a sense of foreboding. He ordered his crew to find somewhere to dock so that he could rest and investigate the strange place the next day. The next morning, they sailed back to the area where they saw Palmyra for the first time, a rocky atoll that they would have likely crashed into. The next time the atoll was spotted was 1807, when the captain of the American ship named Palmyra landed on the atoll and gave it its name. Countless legends have been attached to the lonely stretch of land, which lies between Hawaii and American Samoa. One says that a Spanish pirate ship loaded with plundered gold from the Inca Empire was wrecked on the island. The sailors were marooned and managed to survive on the island for a year before they were forced to leave. They buried the treasure, presumably to come back for it in the future, and set off on 2 poorly made rafts. One of the rafts was never seen again, while the other had only a lone survivor on it when it was picked up by a whaling ship. The survivor recounted his story before passing away due to pneumonia. During the war, there were tales of planes falling from the sky for no reason, disappearing out of radar, and on one occasion, a pilot missed the landing strip and ended up in the ocean, where he became the victim of a shark attack. Another deadly legend is that of the Angel, which was shipwrecked in the lagoon in 1870. A few months later, a passing vessel went to investigate. They found some of the survivors made it to shore, but it seemed they'd been brutally attacked and their remains were strewn about the beach. What happened to the ill-fated Angel crew remains a mystery. The legend of the Angel became all too real in the 1970s, when Malcolm and Eleanor Graham set off on an adventure aboard their boat, the Sea Wind. They planned to live on Palmyra for a few years. When their family and friends lost contact with them, authorities were sent to search for the couple. They found no sign of the Grahams on the island. A few months later, the Sea Wind arrived in Hawaii, piloted by Dwayne Walker and his girlfriend. They were arrested for theft, but there was no evidence they had anything to do with the disappearance. That didn't come until 6 years later, when a South African couple found Eleanor's remains in a locked box. Walker was convicted of taking their lives. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.